T, I don't know if you can hear me. I think you're still on mute.
Oh my days.
I just tried giving you a call.
I did the coolest, I did the sickest intro on earth,
Oh,
mate.
mate, do you want to wheel it up? Do you want to go again?
Yeah, let me go again.
Yeah, pretend like I wasn't here. Pretend like I wasn't here.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay,
all out in the
cool.
chat messaging, letting you know. No
This is
worries, man.
Team Peters. Wired4Music. This is the Wired4Music webinar. Um, I was saying that essentially I just wanted to have a month full of learning, full of education. Oh, I can see the chat. Thank you guys for telling me. Um, yeah, this webinar is about music publishing. I've invited Marlon Perrin because I just think that he knows his stuff. I personally spoke to him. Everybody that I bring in for a webinar, I've either personally checked them out or spoke to them to see if this is a good conversation to have. And in this case, I think it is. Um, I was introduced to Sentric probably 2 or 3 years ago by a friend just when I got out of uni. And I had no idea what it was. And for the longest time, I didn't know what it was until I spoke to Marlon. Um, but what the Centric do, they help artists from all levels, independent to widely successful, in getting the royalties that they deserve, but also they help with getting you sync deals, which is like getting on TV ads and those type of placements. They help get you in shops, etc. All you got to do is submit your music, and that's all completely free. And I've actually tried it out. Um, but this isn't a TP, it's reviewer centric music. This is me telling you that this is an option available to you as a musician. So I would like the professional to let you know. And yeah, Marlon, what are you saying?
Thanks, man. Really, really appreciate you having me on, man. It's good to see you. And yeah, like you said, I just want to be able to give everybody that's watching this a bit of info on, publishing, Sentric, what we do. It's such a complicated, convoluted world. We always call it a bit unsexy. Artists do not find it that interesting, if I'm honest. But alongside that, it's probably one of the most important areas of music in general. If you want to be a successful artist, you want to make sure you're earning your money. You are able to sustain yourself, then you've got to have your publishing on top. And yeah, it can be super complicated, like I said, but it can also be pretty straightforward. And that's exactly what we're here to do, is just to try and make it easy and demystify it. So yeah, man, I've got a bit of a long presentation, nothing too long, and I'll be asking questions or asking people to ask questions and answering as best as I can. So yeah, man, when you're ready, let's get started.
Cool. Let's go.
So this, as I said, this is I guess a presentation about music publishing. It is a 101 about music publishing. We're not going to go into the intricacies of publishing. That's a tough word to say. It can get really deep down and go into levels that you don't necessarily need to know as an emerging artist. So that's things like sheet music and compositions. We're going to focus on the bare bones stuff. So if you are a songwriter or a musician, you've probably come across the terms like royalties. You may even have come across the terms like performance and mechanical royalties. So this is where it starts to differ if you are a songwriter, on the different types of royalties and money that you can earn. And like I said, I'm going to break this down and basically go through exactly what those are. But before I do that, I want to give you a little intro on who I am. So, like I said, my name is Marlon Perrin. I am an artist liaison here at Sentric. And I genuinely feel like I have the best job at Sentric. Whenever I tell people that, they're always wondering why. I basically speak with artists on a daily, and I have the lovely job of doing this, basically educating and letting them know, this is what publishing is, this is how it works, this is how you can get your money, and make sure that you're paid. Obviously, I get to go to gigs sometimes, I get to go to festivals, I get to support artists, physically and actually be there, but also more, fundamentally making sure that they are getting paid and they're not missing any royalties or money dues to them. So yeah, that's what this presentation is all about. So let's crack on. Just trying to move my notes around. You can't see anything there, can you? Don't want to be ruining the magic.
No.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second. Sorry, bear with. A few technical issues today. 1 sec. Why is this not moving over? It's one of these things you should really prepare before, and then you never do. And then when you get started, it all goes wrong. Okay, I think I'm nearly ready. Cool. All right, is this also moving the slides along to you, or is that just on my screen?
Just on your screen.
Okay, let me flip back
There we go.
Cool. All right, so when it comes to music publishing, it's really important to, make a point about the differentials here. So we're not talking about just recordings, we're talking about your songs. So the difference here is it's when you're making music, a recording is something that you would make in a studio, and that's what will be released. But publishing is deeper than that. It's actually about what you're putting down and the songwriting itself. So if you would think about this, it could even be broken down to just the instrumentals or even just the lyrics. As soon as you start creating demos, and whether it be on your phone or if you record something on GarageBand, as soon as it's down, that is considered a song. And is then essentially ready to be considered intellectual property and ready to be collected on. If you think of it like an invention, if you create any sort of invention, it needs a patent. A song is almost exactly the same aspect of that. You create a song, you create an idea, it's intellectual property. You need somebody to say, that's my idea. This is what I'm collecting on it, and this is my share of that. So this is why when a song is created, if it's one person, then it'd say, right, I am the sole songwriter here. It's 100% my song. And then you get into territories where, the world of music, the big hits like the ones with Adele, Harry Styles, Ed Sheeran, these songwriters are usually working with 8, 9, 10 different people, different producers, different songwriters that may not actually feature on the song, the people that have helped to create that idea, basically. So all these people are going to want their fair share of the cut. So that's what music publishing is all about. It's really about making sure that people get their fair share. They say, right, I've been on, let's use a real world example. Adele, for example, her first 3 albums were signed to XL Records. So they paid her a bunch of cash to go out to the studio and go and create those songs. But she actually wrote those songs with a chap called Dan Wilson, and they wrote those songs 50-50. So those are songs that are split 50-50 in terms of the percentages and the songwriter share. So if you go and look those up on even Spotify and you check those credits, it will say Dan Wilson and Adele. And then also, if you were to check into the actual percentages, you'll see it's split usually 50-50. So once that song is sold or it starts creating royalties, they split the amount there 50-50. So you can imagine if you are a songwriter, you're not necessarily the Adele of the world, but somebody like Dan Wilson still taking a hefty chunk of money there just because of what Adele's doing with her music. So yeah, that is fundamentally what songwriting is all about. It's also really important to make a note of if you are in a band, if you think of the likes of 2 great bands, in my opinion, Coldplay and Arctic Monkeys, just because somebody helped write the song doesn't mean that they're always on it. It's actually what is agreed upon with the songwriters. So let me give you an example here. Coldplay, fronted by Chris Martin, absolutely lovely guy, super sound, everybody loves him. He is also fair with his songwriting shares, and he actually splits those out 25% across the board for all the band, because there are four of them that all helping to contribute to the song. He's a nice guy. He wants to give out the shares to everybody. So they split it 4 ways, 25%, all songwriting royalties split to them equally. Now, we look at Alex Turner, love the guy, incredible musician. But if you look at majority of his songs and the songs that he's creating for the Arctic Monkeys, even though they're often created with the band, the drummer, the guitarist, all these guys helping to contribute to the song and still do the songwriting in that aspect, he actually takes 100% of the shares because that's what is agreed upon within the band. So it's not a literary sense of this person did this, so they owe 5% and so on and so on. It's what is agreed. And then once that's agreed, that is what is published to different organizations to then be collected. So I'm going to go into who collects what and where, but that is really quite an important distinction to make between how it's created and who is owed what, basically. And also really important detail here is it can be misleading sometimes if you're not fully aware, but songwriting applies to, like I said, the instrumentals and what we call the composition, as well as the lyrics or the authorship. So, think DJs or dance acts, if they're not writing songs or lyrics down, they're still songwriting by creating instrumentals and compositions. So it's really worth keeping that in mind, and why people split it certain ways. So let's just move this along. This is where technical issues come in. So 1 second. Just trying to move my own slides along. So yeah, this is a really useful slide to help you get an idea of the different pros and the different people that are out there collecting your royalties, basically. So we call this one, I've got pros and different area codes, and that's exactly what these companies are. So a pro is a company that is responsible for collecting royalties for you. That's a performing rights organization. This is where the acronyms come in. I'll just give you a little heads up. You don't need to remember them all. There's literally hundreds, and I'll be honest, I don't know them all. I don't think many people do know them all, even the professionals in this business and the pros in this business. We know a fair few, and we know the differences and how to know them all. But on a day-to-day basis, you don't need to, have every single acronym down. What you need to understand is how they work. So your local pro, who that is super important to know, and some of the key ones that are in your popular areas. So, a lot of UK songwriters, I'm sure, and artists will be watching and responding on this video. Really important to make you aware of the PRS if you're not already. So that is the Performing Rights Society, and that is the UK's local pro, and they are responsible for gathering the performance royalties in the UK. So when it comes to royalties, in theory, these pros should be working together to be collecting royalties for all artists and songwriters across the board, no matter their location. But the practice is it's quite time consuming. It's very difficult to do that. I said there's a lot of acronyms and there's a lot of different pros out there. The simplest way to remember all of them and where they're based is essentially by country and major territories. It's not always the case that every country has one. But generally speaking, all countries will have their own designated pro for either or the performing royalties or performance royalties and the mechanical royalties. So again, if we use the UK as an example again, we've got the PRS who do the performance royalties, and then the MCPS who do the mechanical royalties. Worth mentioning, yeah, we've got those two in the UK, but like I said, certain countries like the USA, they actually have 3 performance royalty societies. So they have BMI, ASCAP, CSAC. You don't need to remember them all, but it's worth mentioning so that you're aware of that some territories may have more or different setups. Germany, for example, has GEMA, and they actually do performance and mechanical royalties. So depending on the country, they have different setups, but the easiest way for you to remember as artists, one country, 1 or 2 pros. But here we go in terms of how it actually works. So all of these pros, you're thinking, right, every country's got a different organization. What are they actually doing? If we use another real world example and take, I know one of my favorite DJs at the moment, a lady called Elka. Elka is a UK based artist. She's actually Welsh. She does incredible, house disco music, and she's touring and playing all over the world. At the minute, she's currently in Australia. If you're thinking there is a pro in Australia, so APRA, if she's touring in Australia, they should be collecting these royalties and then paying it back to her local pro that she's registered with, which is the PRS. That's the theory, and it does happen, but it can take a hell of a lot of time, and it does often fall down and not actually, work completely. And it also means that more people are taking cuts when you're waiting on other pros to find that money, pay it back to your local pro. So that's the theory, but like I said, it can take a long time. It means less people, or it means more people taking cuts, and you're more likely to not see all of that money come your way. That's where Sentric and other publishers step in, and we make the life of an artist a hell of a lot easier by having relationships with all of these different pros. So what we actually do is we go out, we have these relationships with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, PRS, MCPS, all of the major territories that you can think of, all of them. And you'll come to Sentric and you'll register your music with us, and we will then register your music worldwide with all of these different pros. What that means is you can trust that we are then collecting all of your royalties in these major territories. So when, use the same example, Elka is playing her her shows in Australia, her music in Australia, we're there making the relationship with APRA already to find that music and the royalties being generated, to collect it, and then make sure it's paid back to Elka as soon as possible. So yeah, you can appreciate that's happening on a larger scale. It still takes a bit of time, but this is the quickest way to make that happen, and the best way to make sure that less people are taking cut of your music. So yeah, that is how the pros work in different areas. I mentioned earlier that we've got different types of royalties that are being generated. I've touched on two of the most important already. So that is performance royalties and mechanical royalties. And we're going to break down what those are and how those work in a moment. We have things like sheet music that I mentioned, lyrics on merchandising, different types of royalties, but you don't need to worry about those. Particularly at an emerging level, it's really best to focus on three main ways to generate your income, which is, like I said, performance, mechanical, and what I'm going to come on to, which is synchronization, which T also mentioned at the start of the call, which is quite an exciting one. People always are interested in sync, and I'm going to explain how that works in a moment. So, without further ado, we're going to look at performance royalties. Before I go into this, does anybody have any questions at the moment?
Actually, we do.
Yes. I'm trying to keep eyes on many different screens.
You just focus on your screen.
Yeah. What's the question?
So I'm pretty sure this is Jasmine, one of my colleagues at Sound Connections.
Yeah.
She asked the question: as a UK independent artist, we are normally asked to select one of the American publishing societies to represent our music in the US. Is there any benefit to any specific societies?
Yes. I mean, at Sentric, we're not really able to recommend one over the other, or show any sort of preference there. Also, myself personally, I've not seen any major differences. I think if I'm to give you some real genuine helpful advice, you've probably already done this, but yeah, check out the websites for each of them, see what they do offer and the differences. It may be different splits, it may be different offerings in terms of their services. I'm sure they probably will do neighboring rights, and don't worry about that too much. I'm going to come on to that. But these might be some of the things that they're offering that are worth checking, because if you know that's something you want, then make sure that's the company that you're going to choose there. But that's a good question. What I'm going to do as well, I'm going to show you my email at the end of this presentation. If you get good questions that I haven't fully answered, please do email them through. I'll go away and speak with the team and the guys, and we've got an amazing group here that will be able to help answer those.
It is a very good question, though, isn't it? Because
even
when you go on PRS and you try and submit your song, they always ask you, do you want to also give this to American organizations to do international stuff? And I'll give you all these options. Like, do you want to do ASCAP? What are the other ones called?
Do you want to do
BMI? BMI. And you're like, if it was weighty, like, why are you giving me the option?
It's a lot of pressure, right? You don't know what to go for, especially early on.
It's weird, and they don't seem to have that much difference. But also, I think it's important what you're doing, which is like breaking some of the barriers of knowledge down, so that there's a bit more light on what these publishing companies actually do. I just wish there was more resources out there where maybe BMI would be like, yo, this is what we do differently. Do you know what I mean? That way it's a bit more weighty. But I guess what you're saying is, at this stage, it might not be as important to be thinking about that, because the same thing.
It is essentially the same thing. There may be minor differences, but do go on their website, because I know some of them are better than others. I don't know between those three how much they display on that information, but I will be going away and checking that, because that's a really good question. But I'm thinking of examples like PPL and PRS, for example, in that people often get them confused. They're very similar, but they actually collect a different type of royalty. I'll come on to that again later. But I've been onto PPL's website and researched this myself, because it's my job, and they do have a section that really explains what they do and what the PRS does. I think the problem then lies in that a lot of the terminology and explanations are quite complicated and are a bit more tricky to follow. But this is where, like you said, we come in, because it's our job to be collecting for you anyway. So as long as you follow the simple steps with us to register your music, go out, collect it, and find it, you've also got an amazing team, like personal team, like real people, humans, people that actually hit that you can say hello to. So you can ask us the questions. If for example, I don't know, I'm going to know somebody that knows, because we've got amazing expertise here at Sentric, years and years of experience. So yeah, that's our job here as a publisher, basically. Not to plug Sentric too hard, but I'm fully going to plug us.
Cool. Let's
Cool.
you can move forward.
Yes.
Do you want me to control your slides on this
Actually,
post here?
oh yeah, actually, if you could, that might make it easier,
Yeah,
make it a bit
you can.
smoother.
Cool.
Cool. I'll just let you know when I'm moving on. But we'll start here on performance royalties. Is probably the biggest and arguably the most important. And it's a type of royalty that really can sometimes catch people out because it's so, whole. When I say, performance royalties are generated anywhere your music is played or broadcasted in public, I really do mean that. The best example or story I can give you for this would be, if you take yourself on a night out, for example, and let's say you're getting ready and you are, listening to music on the TV, you're actually flicking through the music channels. I don't know if people still do that, like I used to as a kid. And you're watching music on the TV, and then you get a taxi on the way to the club. Then you're watching a live event, a live band, and then also after the band have finished, you're then listening to music through a speaker on, say, Spotify. Every single moment there that music is being heard, that's generating a type of royalty. So the TV playing music, that's a performance royalty. Once you get in a taxi and then they're playing music through the radio, that's a performance royalty. Once you're in the club and you're watching live music, performance royalty, because this is all broadcasted in public. And then again, say the band finish and they put on a show after, and they're playing music through Spotify. Spotify is a performance royalty because it's being broadcasted in public. Spotify is an interesting one. It actually does both, and I'm going to explain how it generates both types of royalties. But yeah, that's the best way to explain what a performance royalty really is and why, when I said, as soon as you put an idea down, as soon as you create a demo, if you were to just sing into your phone and then start playing that out loud, in theory, if you were to put your copyright down, that is a song. Because if you think about artists that have written a song down, they go away into a live venue and they perform that song live, even if it's not released. This is quite a common question people ask me. Does it have to be released? Does it have to be on Spotify? No, if you just create a song and then you play that live, as long as you've registered it and you have it uploaded with the pros and it's your songwriter credits and it's obviously 100% legit and it's original, then it's yours, and that's generating royalties. So yeah, that's why it's super important, and it really can help start generating you money from the earliest part of your career. And it's quite a cool one. I think that, I've got some half finished songs on GarageBand. I'm like, I really need to just get these played somewhere, and then maybe I'll start earning some royalties. But I'm sure you guys as artist producers, you probably have bucket loads more than me and 1,000 times better music than me. So yeah, make sure you're getting it registered and ready to collect from the get-go. So I touched on all of the examples here. The main key performance royalties are radio, TV, and live performances. I'm going to break down and show you exactly how that works. The mantra to remember here is essentially the more people who hear it, the more money it generates. So what I mean by that is, yeah, essentially that if you were to play your song on TV and there were more people watching that TV station, it's going to generate more royalties. The same with radio. If there's more people listening in, it generates more royalties. If you have a bigger live performance, if you're playing a worldwide stadium as opposed to a smaller little gig just at your local pub, that's going to generate more royalties because more people have come to see it, and it's then generating more there. It's a real rule of thumb because there's a lot of maths that goes into figuring out these numbers. You don't need to worry about that. The best way to think of it is the more people hear it, the more it makes for me. So I'll come back to that mantra a few times. I hope you don't get sick of it, but it really is important. It really does help you as an artist remember that. So if we could move on to the next one, T.
Yep.
Or I can if you can't.
Oh, I think I did it already.
Have you? I feel like I've got a little bit of lag on my screen. Are we on to the radio royalties?
Yes. Performance royalties are generated when you're
Oh, no.
publishing.
There we
Oh,
go.
this one.
This
okay.
one. Yeah. Okay, cool. So this is an interesting slide, super interesting. It basically is a breakdown of radio royalties. Like I said, super, super important. Say what you will of radio, I think it is fundamental for artists to get their music out there to pick up the attention of people, both fans and people within the industry, whether it be booking agents or whatever, people that are trying to find interest in their music. And this shows you also the importance of how much money it's going to bring back for you as an artist. So there are two different types of radio stations, and I'm going to break down how both of them work. And the most popular ones, and the ones that you're probably most familiar with, are the census stations. Don't need to know the exact term, but I think an easy way to remember is if you take a general census, census population poll, that's exactly what these BBC stations are. The BBC stations basically report their figures and exactly every song that's being played to the PRS. So that's why it's a lot easier to track the royalties that are being generated, the money that's being made there, and also basically how much it is differentiating between each one. The numbers here are an example if you were playing a 4-minute song on each of these stations. So again, back to that same mantra, the more people hear it, the more it generates. The bigger stations, or the people that have the bigger listenerships, like the BBC Radio 2s of the world, generating £91 for just a 4-minute play, which that's not bad, not obviously to be snuffed at, but if you times that by how many times that's a big song on Radio 2 is going to be played, let's take Miley Cyrus Flowers. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I'm a bit of a pop fan as well as a hip hop, R&B, dance, all of this, and you can't deny how sick that track is. And it's going to be getting played a lot on Radio 2 at the minute. Probably, I don't know, dozens of times throughout the week, maybe more. I don't have the exact figures here, but that song, if you times that out by the amount it's played in Radio 2 for the week, and then also think about where it's being played, through Europe, through America, obviously Miley is going to be getting played all over the States. She's going to be getting thousands through, the next few weeks because of how much that song is being played on big radio stations. So yeah, it shows you the power of radio and how important it is. So the difference here between these stations, they're monitored, the figures of how many people are listening to them by a company called Raja. It's the Radio Joint Audience Research. Don't need to know that, but it's important to know that these are being monitored and they do fluctuate and they change. So I'm definitely more of a BBC6 man, if I'm honest. BBC Radio 6, I think it's got a lot more interesting music, a bit more alternative. But sadly, we nearly lost it a few years back just because the listeners weren't tuning in. It was quite poor. It was only generating around £5 for every 4-minute song being played. And then there was a bunch of 30-something people like me complaining about it, saying, no, we don't want to be listening to, your standard radio 1 and 2 all the time. And they actually started a petition. The listenership went up and they actually hit their first 1 million listeners on BBC Radio 6 quite recently. So it shows you just how quick it can change and how impactful it is. And again, why it's important to get onto BBC Radio 6. Now, the difference between census, obviously you can see it's super important. It takes what we call the lion's share of how much is generated. It's actually 93% of commercial radio income is all through census. So it's a huge amount. But we do still have sampled stations, which actually has one of my favorite, if not my favorite station on. If you've heard of NTS, please do check it out. It's incredible. But the way sampled stations work are essentially smaller stations like your uni stations, local stations, or internet stations like an NTS, like I mentioned. And these shows are, these sampled radio station royalties are sampled for 90 days of the year, hence the term sampled. What that means is they don't generate royalties throughout the year. It's only every 90-day period that is picked. And it can seem a bit of a con if you think, right, I've just got my song played on radio, like NTS, for example, and it was outside of that sample period and I earned nothing. But it's actually in the interest of both, all artists, emerging and top level, because if you think about how much time this takes to find the data and to actually get it paid out, I think the figure for how much work the PRS are doing to generate just census is something like I've got the line here. It's like 6.5 trillion lines of data per year, which is crazy, right? Like there's just a lot of data. It's more than you can imagine. So because PRS are non-for-profit, if they were to add the sampled stations on top of that, that figure would jump astronomically. The overheads of how much time it would take to actually find the royalties and pay them out would be, far greater than it actually is worth doing. So long story short, everybody would get paid less. It would take too much time. PRS would charge more, and we wouldn't find the royalties for anybody, basically. So that's why sampled is only it's only for 90 days, and it's actually the best of both worlds. And yeah, I think it's still super important for stations like NTS because of how it's almost like cultural in the sense that it's a bit of a cult following, and it's really the whole premise of NTS is about being music discovery related, and that's why these sample stations are important. You think uni stations, local stations, people really grow attached to them, and that's why they are there, and why it's still incredible if you manage to get placed on any of these stations. So that is just a little bit on radio. If any questions on that, I know we went through quite a bit there. No? Okay, cool. I'll keep it stepping on to TV royalties then. Yeah, cool. So in the same sense of basically radio, you've got sampled and census. It's the exact same for TV. So we have, your prime time television stations like BBC 1, 2, ITV 1 and 2, and Sky Sports channels. They also will be earning far more than a sampled station. And if you think BBC 1, obviously that's the most watched channel just because of the access, I'd say. And it's the same concept that if you have your song played on this station, on this show, sorry, it's going to generate more than if it was played on ITV2, sadly for the ITV2 watchers of the world. So yeah, that's how that is working. Really worth mentioning as well, if your song was obviously longer, it would actually generate more because it's on the show for longer, and that's the same for radio and TV. So those figures, if we quickly flip back, are for a 4-minute song. If it was a 8-minute song, these figures would double, and same if it was a 2-minute punk banger, then it'd only be half of that amount. So that is TV royalties and radio royalties. Really, really important section now, and important topic to discuss in terms of live royalties. I think probably my favorite area because I am such a lover of the festival, a gig, and seeing music live. I think it really makes artists and really helps you learn who you love as a fan. But also, again, incredibly important for generating royalties and money. What you're looking at here are 2 different types of venues. I know there's quite a few on there, but when it comes to live performance royalties, it actually splits into 2 areas. So we have gigs and clubs. So the top 2 that you're looking at here would be considered gigs, just the smaller venues that aren't always playing live music. They might be pubs that, then have a band on every Saturday, or bars that do that. Whereas clubs are, sorry, I've said that the wrong way around. Clubs would be gigs and clubs would be the 2 smaller ones, and then it's major live events. Apologies. So anything that is a smaller gig and club would be the first 2, and the bottom 4 you're looking at there would be a major live event. So, if you're in a stadium and it's, a bigger gig with a crowd that's solely there for music, that would be considered a major live event. Now, the importance here is the difference in terms of the licensing with the PRS. So all of these will be paying an amount to the PRS automatically. So the gigs and clubs have to pay a license to the PRS to be allowed to play their music live. Now, if you are an artist and songwriter and you perform your music live, you can now go out and say, right, I've played at a Barfly and I played a 25-minute set and it generated £61. You put that request in and say, I played at this venue at this date and this set list, and you will be owed that money. It's quite a common misconception that, if you're doing that, you're chasing the bar directly and you're saying, you owe me this money, but it's not correct. It's actually, think of it in the sense that these gigs and these clubs are already paying that amount to the PRS as their licensing fee to be allowed to play live music. So all you're doing is collecting your fair share. The money's already there. You've already played. The royalties are there. You just need to go and collect it and say, I played this song on this day, or this set on this day at this venue. Incredibly important, and it really can be a lifeblood for emerging acts, especially when they're doing, a lot of touring, a lot of hours, just starting out. And then when you think about the numbers here, when you start doing major live events, it's astronomical. Like that 8K figure is quite an interesting story. So we actually had a band that won a competition to support Bon Jovi. Say what you will of that band, they are doing numbers. And they played, I think it was the Glasgow Arena. Let me just double check that. Yeah, I think it was. And they played to obviously thousands of people there. And sorry, no, it wasn't Glasgow. That was Edinburgh Stadium. Could not start a rivalry between those two places. But they played at Edinburgh Stadium. And this band supported Bon Jovi for a 20-minute set. The stadium's actually called Murrayfield. They got paid $8K in royalties alone for the 20-minute set. Now, if you think all of the things that go into live performances, all of the money that's generated there, you've got ticket sales, you've got bar, you've got merch. This is completely separate to that. This is just having your songs played in these venues. So if you're a songwriter and your song is being played and you're claiming on that, that's generating you royalties to be claimed. So it's an amazing opportunity, especially when you're a band supporting a major name like Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi actually got something silly like 72K because they played to the same size crowd, but they did a 3-hour set. So you can think, right, once you start getting to those numbers, it's there. And that, again, that's separate to ticket sales, bar merch, all of these additional things that come with a live performance. So yeah, it's quite an exciting area. I think it's probably the most exciting area for me when it comes to royalties. Now, if we move on to festivals. Ooh, I think I did. So there we go. Yeah, so festivals, actually, this is my favorite area. Like, everybody loves festivals, right? And it's super interesting to think how it works in differentiating between a festival and a gig. With a festival, this is all from one festival here. We're looking at Reading and Leeds. Again, think of the mantra, the more people that hear it, the more money it generates. So when we're looking at performances at festivals, if you're playing on that main stage and say this is based on data doing a 25-minute set, you're going to be earning 2K in just royalties alone. So it's, again, an incredible opportunity. I think festivals are an exciting time of year. You can see a lot of amazing music in one venue all at the same time. But you also, if you're playing there, you know, if you're doing a BBC introducing stage, and again, it's a 25-minute set, you're still generating £300 worth of royalties. It's incredible. It's good to think about this in a real-world example. I actually saw James Blake and Fred again, I think last year, had the woes of having to split my time between the two, but because they were on the same time, they'd be earning the same amount of royalties for time and who they're playing to, because the set was exactly the same, but James Blake was on a bigger stage, so he would have been earning more. So that is probably the best way to get your head around how this is working. So we can now move on to mechanical royalties. Before I do that, does anybody have any questions just about performance royalties? I think there's one in the YouTube chat, T.
Is there?
Is that just a comment?
I think that's just a reply to the older.
Okay, cool.
Messages.
All right, cool. So what I will do then is crack on with mechanical royalties and how that works. So I've talked about performance. It's all about public. Mechanical is all about having your music reproduced. So what I mean by that is having it, whether it be physically or digitally reproduced, it's generating royalties there. So that's physical like CD, vinyl, or any download, whether it be downloaded onto Apple Music or Spotify. I'm going to break down the difference in terms of Spotify and what it does, because it's quite an interesting one. But the company here that is collecting your money is the MCPS. So again, if anybody's making music and say a record label's wanting to release your music, they have to, again, like all the other examples, pay that licensing fee to PRS. The record labels will pay the licensing fee to the MCPS. So yeah, that shows you just another area that your money is being, all your music's generating money and you need to go out and collect. Here's a quick plug again for Sentric. You wouldn't have to do all of this registration. If you went through us, we would be doing this all for you automatically. I want to quickly bring it back to pros because, I mentioned them earlier and how there are so many, and just get people's head around, right, the time that it would take to register to the PRS and all of the other performance royalties like BMIs of the world. And obviously there's hundreds out there. And now if you times that by 2 and do it for mechanical, you think about how much work this takes and why by registering through one place with one publisher, it just really does make it a lot easier for you. So whether you use us or anybody, it's just important to be using somebody to save yourself the time and make sure nothing's going amiss. So yeah, mechanical royalty is probably less important than performance to begin with. It's really when you start generating a lot of income and start making more record sales, whether it be CD, vinyl, or streaming quite a bit of money. So I'm going to go into a breakdown basically of what this looks like and a real world example. So if we use the earlier example of Adele, so when Adele is creating her music and then she's deciding, right, I'm going to sell 100 CDs, whether it be CDs or vinyls these days, I don't know what people buy more, probably more vinyl, but there you go. She doesn't sell the CD as such directly to the people buying them. It's obviously bought through a third party like a HMV of the world. So what will happen is the MCPS have a rate that is agreed upon, which is 8.5%. When Adele say sells 100 CDs, I'm sure she's selling way more than 100 CDs, but when she does that, she'll agree what we call a dealer price with HMV, and or the record label will, when to be Adele doing this, it'll be her record label, and they will agree to sell 100 CDs at £5 dealer price. So that will generate £500. Obviously, HMV will whack up the price and probably sell them for £15, £20 or whatever. But this is how much the record label is making just for the sell to the store. So with that £500 that is generated, we then take that 8.5% for the MCPS licensing fee and apply that, and it then generates £42.50. So that's how much it's made in terms of mechanical royalties, just for that one CD, that one album, or obviously 100 times that. When we then look at that, if we were to break it down track by track, let's say it's a nice round number of 10 songs, and each song's obviously split 50-50, just to make it easy to remember. That means each writer would then get £2.12 for the 100 CDs sold there. So it sounds like, or per track. So it sounds like you're not generating or earning a lot. You sell 100 CDs, you make what, 20 quid for Adele there. But she's not selling 100 CDs. She's selling like 30 million, I think it was, for the first 2 or 3 albums. So you think about how much more that's earning. And this is a completely separate royalty alongside the performance side. So as well as all the performance royalties she would have been getting for radio play, performing at the Glastonbury, everything. Like, she's got this on the side. Her money is being made just through the reproduction of it alone, just by having it reproduced. So yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite exciting, and it's really super important. And you need to make sure you're on top of it as an artist, basically. Now, I mentioned streaming earlier, and it gets a bit. It's not too complicated here. It's quite an interesting one in terms of why it really, I think, helps to understand the difference between performance and mechanical. Because with streaming, it generates both. And the reason why, if again we use the earlier example, a song is played on Spotify, that's public. It's generating performance royalties. But when your music is being played on Spotify or Apple Music, for example, or even YouTube, obviously it's being downloaded to be played again every time. So that's why you have the stream counter, and it keeps going up and up because it's being re-downloaded over and over and over again. When it's doing that, the reproduction is generating mechanical royalties. So that's why these music DSPs and music platforms will actually be doing that. So it's quite interesting. To give you a round figure, that's probably going to help with getting your head around the exact amount being earned. Roughly 1 million streams generates around 5k worth of royalties. It's a bit of a figure that Spotify have the formula locked up in a vault somewhere. I don't think many people know it, if any, but it's worth using just to get your idea around how many royalties are being generated for these big guys just through streaming alone, which is quite interesting. I've put on there, master and publishing rights, because there are 2 different types of royalties earned here. And I'm going to go through those in a moment. And it's purposely complicated, this next slide, because what I'm trying to explain is, if you are an artist and a songwriter trying to do this on your own, which you obviously can, it's very techy and it's very tricky, and there's a lot of steps and hurdles to go through, and you have to make sure you're doing it right. That's probably the most important thing. What, again, on this point here about being centralized, what that means is we can basically go through one place. We're not going through multiple different locations like you would have to for the performance royalties. We actually work with a company that have all of the mechanical royalties in one pot through the different global pros out there. So it just I'll use the example now. It really makes things a lot easier for you as an artist. So the way to look at this is if, for example, you're an artist and you're fortunate to have somebody listen to your song a million times, or some people listen to your song a million times, it's going to generate that roughly that 5K figure, as I said. Now that is split between the master rights holder and the publishing rights holder. And the split here is 80% goes to the master rights owner and 20% obviously to the publishing side. Now you might be thinking that's a bit of an unfair split and it's quite a lot. I won't go into the full details here, but basically it's a bit of a hangover from previous setups where record labels would have a much bigger overhead in terms of creating the song, getting it produced, getting it made. And obviously record labels would usually be the people that own the masters. So they would have this standard previous agreed upon process and agreement or deal. And that would then basically mean that they'd always be getting paid a bit more for their fair share of having the bigger overhead of paying for studio time, whatever it may be, to make the record happen. Obviously nowadays, fortunately, a lot more artists are independent. They own their own masters. They can create music themselves. They don't rely on record labels. I say fortunately for me anyway. I believe that's probably it's nice that happens. And that's why there's a lot of people fighting the case to make sure that 80% figure comes down and is a bit more fairly split towards the publishing side and the songwriters. So anyway, take that 5K figure. You've obviously had 1 million streams. Congrats. Welcome to the Million Streamer Club. You've got 5K split between 80% going to master rights, so 4K, and 20%, which is $1,000, going to the publishing side. Now, I obviously mentioned you've got your performance royalties and your mechanical royalties. So 500 of that would be through the performance side. And that's all of the different territories in the world that I've mentioned. Let's say, for example, the song was nicely played in 10 different territories equally. So just to keep it, obviously would be way more complicated than this, and you can already see it's quite tricky. If it was played evenly between 10, that would mean that £50 is generated in 10 different locations for your performance royalties. So you'd have to go and collect from 10 different pros £50. And then also on the mechanical side, you'd have that £500 split between 10 locations also. So you'd have to go and collect that 10 £50 twice. It's a tongue twister. I can't even say it right because it's that complicated. And this is the point of this slide, is to show you it's a lot of work if you were doing it non-centralized and just on yourself and going through all these territories direct. Now, when it comes to this centralized solution and going through us, we still have to collect the £50 10 times, just the once for the performance side. But then we work with a company called AMRA, who would centralize the mechanical royalty. So we only have to collect the £500 once on the mechanical side. So I appreciate that's super complicated, but the point here is that we simplify it and make it easier. Two really good points here. If your money was missing, even say £5, £10 on the mechanical side, because we are working with all these organizations, we'll be able to see it on either side. So we'll know, okay, £5, £10 missing on mechanical, it should be evened up because we can see that there's say 500 on the performance side. For some reason, there's only 495 here. So it allows us to make sure that we're finding money everywhere and nothing's going amiss, basically. And it really, I think the best thing for an artist, if they're using us, it really leaves them feeling assured that they're not losing anything and, everything's where it should be, basically. I think the crazy figure was, I'm just trying to find it, it went up like 400%, the digital royalties collection side for our business when we started using AMRA. So it just shows you how much jump we were just finding stuff and make sure nothing was going amiss and all of our artists were getting paid. And obviously if your songwriter's using us, then you're going to be a lot happier knowing that. Are there any questions here? I'm sure there probably is because this gets, like I said, super techy. If not, then amazing, you followed perfectly.
Well, I think well, for me personally, after taking that information, I might need to process that. So I'll just encourage if anyone does have any questions, start thinking of them now and they will definitely come to the end. But there is one that just came in, and that is from Perry, and she says, what are the 3 biggest issues that the music publishing industry is facing, and what is Sentric Music doing to tackle those?
That's a big question. Three biggest problems within the music publishing industry and what we're doing to tackle them. Right, you got me stumped. I might have to go away and think about that. I feel like it's an essay question. I've got to write like a 20-marked question answer to that. Okay, let me try and think of some off the top of my head. I think making sure that, okay, I'll use me, just me personally, what I find is an issue, because I don't think I could answer for the whole worldwide industry, but like making sure that songwriter splits are fair and accurate. Like, obviously, if you've got a song, I'm going to come on to this in a moment. If you're a songwriter and you've co-written with somebody, let's say you've co-written with 5 people, or let's say 4 people, and you as one person put 25, 25, 25, split evenly. Person B and C has also done the same. So you 3 put, yeah, we'll all split it 4 ways, so 25%. The person D says, actually, I did 80% and these lot did nothing. Then that's going to fall into something called copyright control, and it's going to cause problems. Nobody's going to get paid until it's agreed upon. So I think, it happens for sure. And copyright control is basically like limbo. Your music's sat in limbo. Nobody's making anything. Nobody can use it. It's obviously a shame because it's royalties sat there going to waste. So what I'd say is making sure that people are understanding and doing it correctly to make sure it doesn't happen is probably one of the biggest areas that I find anyway, just specifically in what I'm doing. Wider side, I'd say probably education, actually, if we're saying the second part. Definitely, actually. I mean, I think I could probably say that with chest for most people within the publishing industry, whether you're an artist or you're on our side or elsewhere within publishing, it helps people understand it and give them the education, because it is complicated just by the nature of what you're doing. Sometimes it has to be that way and it can't be avoided. Sometimes maybe it could be, but that is the nature of publishing. And I think, I can say it again with chest, that Sentric, we really do work on the education side, hence why we have this presentation. And we've got a team around us of incredibly smart and experienced people that know what they're doing. And if they're not, and they don't know what they're doing, they know somebody that does, and they can get them in touch with somebody that can help. So yeah, education in general within publishing is definitely a huge thing. And it's something that we really do pride ourselves on at Sentric. And I almost see my role more as education, to be fair, just making sure people understand what we do and what publishing is about, and really helping them with that. Third point, I've given you 2, so I want to finish off now. I said copyright control, yeah, education. I think making sure that we can find royalties backdated potentially. I mean, again, I really want to go and ask this question to somebody that really has been in the business for a while, because I think they would give a really good answer here. But yeah, for me, I think backdating royalties is there's only so far that you can go back, right? You can't find everything from forever, from whenever ago. So being able to do that would be pretty incredible, making sure that we're finding royalties everywhere and being able to pay out fairly. But that's a lot of work. And I think that will come with time and trying to find as much data as possible. And yeah, it's something that we're working on here at Sentric for sure. Hence why we do the registrations and really preach getting your stuff up and uploaded as soon as possible. So yeah, really, really good question. Please email me that. I might start using that on my day-to-day with people. Just drop that on them. It's like a 20-point essay question, and you can get 4 marks for giving a sick answer. But yeah, I'll stop rambling on. Any other questions before I move on? I'm going to take silence as a no and move on to the lovely world of synchronization, which is quite interesting. Sync, everyone I think is aware of it, but it is such almost like an enigma and very difficult to get into and get solid opportunities. But what synchronization is getting your music placed onto stuff over visual images. So, music, films, games, adverts, wherever it may, sorry, I said music, I mean TV shows, games, adverts, films, anything really. And it's obviously like an amazing thing to have when you see your song on a game like FIFA. I know everyone wants to be on the FIFA soundtrack. Growing up playing that to death, It's actually got a banging soundtrack. Everyone knows it. But what it does is it gives you incredible exposure. You know, everyone's going to see your song. And if they attribute it to something cool, like a cool game or a sick film or a really sick TV show, everyone's going to love the song by association. So it's that exposure. But obviously these pay out quite a lot too. You know, you can get hefty amounts just for getting your song placed on these things. So yeah, it can make a huge amount of difference to your career as a songwriter or artist, and generate a significant amount of income. With all of that being said, you can probably think why the next slide is appropriate. Incredibly, incredibly competitive. Everyone you can think of is applying for these sync briefs and these opportunities to have your song over an amazing advert. Like, think John Lewis, right? The John Lewis Christmas advert is probably the most hyped up Christmas event of the year. And oh, I think I've lost T, but I think we're still rolling. I'll keep rolling on, and if there are any issues, I'm sure somebody will message me. Yeah, the John Lewis Christmas advert is the most hyped up event for Christmas of the year, and purely for what's going to be in it and what the song is. And obviously they put a lot of work into it. They make it look really, really cool, really thoughtful. And there's only one song that gets it right. And think about how many people want to be on that, but for the exposure, the payment, and almost the pride of saying I made it onto the John Lewis ad. But there's thousands of people that make songs for them or apply for them, and that's why it's incredibly competitive. But what we do at Sentric, to plug us a little bit more, we make sure that not only you are in the best position possible to be able to receive those. I think T's coming back in. Is that all running smoothly, T? I don't know if that had any glitches.
Everything's running fine. I just made a mistake.
No worries. I was just saying about sync and why it's so incredibly competitive. But what Sentric will do, just a little plug, we get your songs registered to make sure that they're ready to be pitched out there, and that you are able to get these opportunities. But we also have the relationships with these companies to help these briefs happen, to make them happen, basically. So I'll move on to a few examples of how it works and what you need to have cleared and why we're really important for doing that. So when it comes to sync, you need to make sure that all your registrations are done. And like I said, not in copyright control. I touched on that before. If your music is in copyright control, not only is it in limbo and won't be used, like you won't be collecting royalties, you won't be able to pitch your music for sync because, you know, sync agents and music supervisors will know this and they're just not going to use your music then. So for anything at all you can think of, you need to have your publishing rights cleared, also the master copyright cleared. You know, I mentioned earlier, stereotypically, the master copyright is usually the people paying for the recording. So whether it be the record label, the modern music, it's fortunate that it is the artist, but record labels traditionally would have been the people that pay for it. So you need to make sure that all of the people involved in the master side have registered the correct splits, and they've also agreed to any sync opportunities. And again, on the publishing side, are all the songwriters on board? Have they all registered? You know, use that example earlier of the 4 people. Have they registered all correctly? There's nobody disputing it or saying a different claim. And have they all agreed to the sync opportunity too? Even if somebody owns 1% and they say no, that sync can't go ahead. And it's sad when that happens because, you know, cool opportunities go amiss basically. The term for this is most favored nation, MFN. You might not need to know it, but it's useful to know. It basically protects all parties, you know, for the master and the publishing side from being screwed over. Basically, you're going to make even split because if you own the master side and the publishing, you earn it all. But if you don't, and there's some people that have got a bit of share of everything, then it has to be split evenly between the master and the publishing copyright. But that's for the upfront sync fee. Sorry. So yeah, that is the sync side. Just going to go into something that's really important about sync when it comes to registration, and I touched on that a second ago. If you own your master and your publishing, you become something called one-stop. So it's incredibly attractive to music supervisors and sync agents because they know that they only have to contact you. The role of a sync agent to me sounds really cool, right? You think I'm just basically looking at songs to put over the new Batman film. Like we actually got this crazy techno track onto the new Batman film, which is mad, by the way. But you think of that, like who wouldn't want to just watch stuff and think what song goes on that? But the reality is, most of the time, it's admin related. You're basically chasing people to get stuff cleared. Is this song registered? Can I now use it? Yes or no? So almost 80% of their job is that. So it's super stressful in that aspect, and a lot longer for them in that aspect. But that's why if you are one stop and you own both sides, you're incredibly attractive, because they know they only have to deal with you. They only need to write one contract, and it's only coming to you to get sorted. So it's so much easier for them. So that's why if you're at the moment owning your masters and you've got all your publishing copyrights cleared, you know that you're really attractive to a sync agent. So try and stay on top of that. I've mentioned fees and how much you can earn. It's kind of like the earlier example of the more people that hear it, the more it generates, but not always the case. It's based on, where your song's being played, how long that agreement's lasting for, and how big the artist is, basically. We've had, some crazy fees. We had a worldwide ad with Apple for one of their phones, and obviously that's worldwide with one of the biggest brands, so they're going to pay out a lot more. Whereas if you're just on like a local TV show, like some soap opera or something, you're probably not getting paid too much, but it's still some exposure. So definitely don't scoff at any of these opportunities. So yeah, that is sync opportunities. And I'm going to specifically go into, sorry, just moving myself along. Going to go into UK TV and what you need to have registered. So this is a really good example of what Sentric will do to make sure that you're ready for sync. And I've touched on 2 of the 3 acronyms you're looking at here. So the PRS, the MCPS, you should know by now, the performance and mechanical royalties. And we do that here at Sentric, so you don't have to worry about that. Somebody I spoke with earlier mentioned the PPL, and this is where it can get a little bit complicated and confusing between the PRS and the PPL. The PPL do the master copyright, whereas the PRS will do your publishing copyright. And so do the MCPS. So PRS, MCPS are doing the publishing copyrights, the performance mechanical. PPL will do your master copyright. So, if you think in the earlier example I used, it's so important to have these both, or all 3 of them registered somewhere, so that you can then use your opportunities for UK TV. UK TV, once you are under all 3, will consider you under the blanket license, which means basically they can use your song as and when. It may sound a bit sus. You may think, I want to kind of be told when that's happening. It actually works for you in your favor. It means that they don't have to chase up, 100 different songwriters again or different copyright holders. They just know that this song's under the blanket license and it's fair game to be used. The only time they may contact you is if your song is being used for something contentious, whether it be the opening credits or the end credits, or if it's being used over sex scenes, drug scenes, or anything with violence, or the fun stuff. But you might want to know about it. If it's your song, you want to know why your music's being used. So yeah, this is the registration process. This is what's super important to be covered, and what Sentric will help with. Like I said, if you're interested in sync, getting your registrations down is half the battle. So that's why we're super important here. I've touched on different royalties that will be generated here. So we won't go through that in too much more detail. But if we look at the next differentiator, US TV, it's quite interesting how this works on contrast to UK TV, because they won't necessarily require all of the registrations like we would with the blanket license. They actually pay up front, whereas UK TV don't always. Like I mentioned, if you're on the blanket license, they'll use your music. If there's a fee there, they will then potentially pay up, but not always. It might not require an upfront fee, whereas US TV, there almost always is. So that's why you have to have the master and publishing copyright upfront cleared. If you think US TV, it's broadcasted worldwide and repeated over and over again. So I'll go back to the UK really quickly. If you think of like a show like Love Island or Made in Chelsea, not one for me, but these shows are played quite regular, and they're really good for emerging artists to get their music found and Shazammed. Whereas US TV shows are, think of what's that, US health show, doctor show, is it Grey's Anatomy? That's played everywhere on repeats, right? But as soon as it has a song featured on there, because it's being played, and I mentioned earlier with performance royalties, it's generating performance royalties. Every time it's repeated, it's still generating those royalties. So you can think about how much money and opportunities is available there if you're getting your music landed on a US TV show. Yeah, it can really be career-changing exposure. So what we've done here at Sentric is really help to outline some simple steps to make sure that you are, getting your music in the right position possible. I won't go through all these steps individually because we have an actual slide and presentation for this that is an hour within of itself, and we can really go into nitty-gritty of sync. But some real takeaway things to think about here: make sure that you have instrumentals. Is something I always ask for. Whenever you get sync briefs, they always require the instrumentals. Think about any music that's used on TV and adverts. It's usually instrumentals, then maybe a little bit of lyrics. So get instrumentals, get your data, your metadata right, and make sure that the songs are in different file types, WAV, MP3, AV, because, supervisors use different things. So if you can get this simple steps, it can sound a bit long, but you make it a bit of a habit, making sure that, the metadata, and what I mean by that is song name, artist name, on every single bit of file that you're sending out is there and is clear to read. You're going to make a music supervisor's life incredibly easier and more likely to use it. If they see unknown artists played by unknown artists, or some unknown song played by unknown artists, they're just going to be like, what's this? Skip it. And they want to see the song name, the genre, the time length, everything, and also an instrumental and different file types. With your contact details, if you can, in like the info spot, just really make sure you're on top of those things, I'd say. Trying to think if there's anything else that a music supervisor will ask for. The right people, and this is all about the right people and the right approach here, and it's super important because, we have a bit of a saying here at Sentric: it's better to contact 10 of the right people instead of spamming 1,000 of the wrong people. You want to be getting your music into the right places and not just sending it everywhere and hoping. You want to be targeted in who you're contacting. Maybe, look up what this music supervisor's done in their spare time. Well, not in their spare time, but, what have they posted previously through their work? Is there anything relevant that you can connect with? Can you say, oh, I see you like this band or this artist. I also have a similar sound, and here's why I think you'd like my music. Be really targeted. With Sentric, again, to plug us, we have these relationships. We know what music supervisors like, and that's why they work with us, because of the briefs that they're putting out there and how we can help them there. So yeah, just make sure you're going for the right people and selling yourself correctly, and just being patient. It takes so much time, and yeah, it's something that when it comes along, it's incredible, but it's not something that happens immediately. So think about how competitive it is, but just get your music in the right position possible to make it happen. Final thing on sync, and just kind of leads nicely into Sentric. What we do, and just to plug us a bit more, we are non-exclusive. So when it comes to sync, what I mean by that is, if you're working with other sync agents or other companies, that's absolutely fine. We're an extra team in your corner to help you get those placements, just to get your registrations in place and pitch to our companies and brands that we work with. But if you happen to get a placement elsewhere, that's absolutely fine. As T mentioned before, and in the video, we are an extremely artist-friendly deal. Yeah, we offer an extremely artist-friendly deal. It's 80-20 to the artists, and they retain their rights should they leave. And our standard deal is 28 days, so they can leave with just 4 weeks notice, and there's no upfront fee. It's really just about making sure that your music is being covered and there isn't anything being amiss, basically. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the presentation, what we do. I'll leave my contact details here. If you have any questions at all, you know where to find me. But I don't know if you've got any questions off the back of that. I think I went over time a little bit, but really appreciate you guys hopping on. Any thoughts or questions, mate?
Thank you, Marlon. I mean, if you have time, we have time.
Razorberg.
So, okay, we've got a question from Perry anyway. So,
yes.
She asks, what is the best way for upcoming independent artists or producers to clear their samples? The main sample clearing site that I've seen is Tracklib.
Okay, so yeah, sample clearances isn't something that we help with at Sentric at the moment. It's a hard one because I know a lot of people use a lot of samples, and it can be tricky to get that to happen. I think the only thing I would say is obviously know if you're sampling somebody, know who they're published by. And if you know who they're published by, you know who to contact at least. And the best place to check that, if you have a PRS account, you should be able to search works, and then you should be able to, from there, find the artist, find the original like song name, and once you find the artist name, you can then loop back and try and find who their publisher is, and then you can try and contact them directly.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm also like, on that note, TrackLab is a decent one. I've not used it, but I've looked into using it, and I know that when you buy a sample from them, they'll give you the license immediately so that you can just use it. You just got to pay. But yeah, like Marlon said, I feel like the sampling thing is just kind of be aware of who you're sampling. Try and find someone that's accessible from the beginning. That'll probably help you a lot. Like if you are making music and you find a sample, like try and find someone that you can actually access a lot easier than someone in China that is going to be very hard to email. You can't even find their email because then it's going to be almost impossible.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously don't, if you know it's got samples in it, you obviously then can't be putting it on as your song like 100%. And if you're planning on releasing a song and putting like a lot of work into it and promo and stuff, I think just be aware of that you can't claim back the royalties unless it's cleared. So yeah, just be mindful of that. I think I know loads of people put sample music on SoundCloud and stuff because they can promote themselves there and it's not generating royalties. But yeah, I think it's a hard one because I know you can make some pretty sick music if you're sampling a lot, but unless it's cleared, you're not going to get the publishing side done. So it's like T said, I think best thing to do if you really want to get serious about a song that you've sampled, then just get the contacts and go to them direct, I guess, which can be tricky.
here's a question. And this is a clarification one. You mentioned that in sync, the way it's arranged is that if you get an upfront fee, the upfront fee is split between everybody evenly. So just to clarify for myself, does this mean that if I make a track and you have 2% of it, when it comes to actually accepting the sync deal, that sync deal splits between me and you, but it's an equal split despite your 2%? Is that what you said?
Not quite. So the 50-50 split is between the master copyright holder and the publishing copyright holder.
Okay.
So that's that most favored nation that I mentioned. So, if you are, 2% songwriter, and let's say there's obviously, I don't know, 5 or 10 other songwriters, say you got offered 5K or 10K, the complete sync deal was 10K, then 5 of that will go to the, strong of words, 5 that would go to the master copyright holder, and 5 of that would go to the publishing copyright holders. So your 2%, I guess in theory you should take 2% of that 5K, but it might be different if it's a sync deal. You might agree differently with your songwriters, but I think usually it should be your percentage of the publishing side split between the halves there, if that makes sense.
Cool. And Odette asks, if you're signed to a label if you're signed to a label where they own your masters, what royalties can you claim apart from the performance royalties?
So you'll be getting your performance and your mechanical. If they own your masters, it's likely that they'll be doing PPL and naming rights for you. Usually the case. Obviously, it's different with different record labels. Some do more, some do less. But yeah, you should still be, unless they have an agreement with you and they say, actually, we want to be doing all of your collections, then obviously we can't work with you, sadly. If they've already got the rights for the publishing side. But if it depends on the record label deal, basically. But I think best to email me direct about that one, and I can look into that, or we can confirm what the deal is and what we can do on our side.
Cool. Yeah, I hope that helps. Okay. So one of the reasons why I booked you is because I wanted we have producers that are making a live event next week.
Oh, sick.
Those are the people that are mainly commenting right now.
Yeah.
And I said to them that publishing and live music kind of go together in some
Mm,
cases. In our venue that we're doing a show in, if you go into the artist green room, you can see like little forms that artists can write down what songs they play their set list, and then the venue will go ahead and pass that on to PRS.
mm.
So I just wanted to ask you, how can event event producers help musicians make sure that they're getting their publishing from their shows? Because yeah, does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, how to make sure you're getting your royalties if you're playing live, right?
Yeah, and how can event producers make sure that musicians are,
Getting
being
their
looked after and
royalties.
getting it done? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a uh, good question. I think the most important thing, I really should have said this actually. One of the most important things about live performance royalties, is there's a 12-month window that you can collect back on. It backdates 12 months, and then after the 12 months, you're going further back, you won't be able to get it. So it's really important to stay hot on it. Make sure that you know where you've played and when, and the set list as well. Um, I know I don't think there's most any artist that just has the same set every single time, but they probably have similar ones. And it's really important to make sure that you have that set list down and you're able to get it out as soon as possible. Um, with how we claim on our, because you can do all this through Sentric, and how you do it for us is by, you have to wait until you've had that show. I think the same with PRS, you do it retrospectively, but it's the same if you do any live show, whether it be in Europe or abroad outside of the UK. If you're doing it with us, we'll go and find out. So it's a case of, you can use PRS, which is fine, but it's usually they only collect the UK, or it'll be harder to collect, outside of outside of the UK. So with us, if you're just getting your sets down as soon as possible with where and when, that's probably the best way to do it. And I think the event producer, maybe keep a note of like who's played um, their set list. If they've sent it to you, keep a list of that. Obviously, it can be a bit more admin here, but like if you want to make sure they're getting paid and they haven't already done it themselves, then maybe just remind them, okay, now you've had the show, a week's gone by or whatever. Here's a set list, here's the date, obviously here's the venue details, like here's the location and the name of the venue. Please go and collect that, or put that claim in as soon as possible. Something like automated reminders would be pretty cool, to be fair, just to remind people that you've had the show. Have you claimed your royalties yet? Don't do that through us, do it through Sentric or PRS or wherever it may be.
Mm, nice. Okay.
I think actually, to add to that question, to encourage it as well, because I think, like I said, the misconception is if you're an event producer or you're working for a venue, the venue might be the conception that, or preconception that a venue might be the person that is paying you directly when they're not. And if they're already actively encouraging that artist to go and do it, it probably give them a bit more like confidence to be like, okay, cool. So they want me to get my money. It's not coming out of their pocket directly. They've already paid it. So I need to go and do it myself. So just the knowledge if they haven't got it already.
Mm, that's good to know. I want to check. Has anyone else got any questions? Um, if so, please slap it in the chat. I mean, we've got there's kind words for you. I'll put it on
Uh,
the screen from Jasmine.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'll have to
Yeah,
screenshot this. Is this on the video? I'm gonna
yeah.
I'm gonna do a quick screenshot now before it's too late.
Cool.
I really appreciate you guys. I think it's been one of the best presentations I've had. Genuinely, it's nice to meet you before, and you've had quite a lot of questions, and yeah, like it's just been a bit more like personable and informative for me as well as with you guys. And if you have any questions, you've got my email there. You've got Centric's email. Hit like fire away, and like I said, if I don't know something, I'll know someone that does.
Nice. I
Sick.
think we can wrap this up. In fact, I have one more question. This is the last
Sure.
one, maybe two. One is you mentioned that the band Bon Jovi, basically, you said
Jovi, yeah, yeah.
they did a 3 hour
3 hours,
set,
I
yeah?
think it was,
Cool.
at Murrayfield. I had to double check, so I got the venue wrong.
Mm-hmm. And my question is, when you get paid for your set, are you getting paid for the songs in that set or for the set's length? Me, when I'm doing a show, I might be talking for 20 minutes, 15 minutes in
Ah,
total, as well
okay.
as doing music.
Yeah,
So
good question. I've had
yeah,
similar questions, like especially for DJs and like if they've got like a hype man, like where do you draw the line, like between who is that a song? Has he just said a few bars? And it can get a bit of a grey area, but I think it has to basically be a song registered, and it has to be like on our, because I know our account at least. I'm sure when you're doing the registrations for the live events, it needs to then be a song on your account too, because you need to like link it.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, if it's like if you're talking, that's not really a song unless you've actually unless it's spoken word, and you've got that down registered and you've not released it. It's just a spoken word song that you've got down. Then yeah, that would be. But if you're just saying words on a stage, I wouldn't say that is you can't claim those songs. When we use Bon Jovi example, they're doing that 3 hour set. The songs that the amount of money that's been paid and royalties that have been paid for are the songs that they've played in that 3 hours.
mm,
So it is the time as well, because it's like how long is that song? If it's being played for longer, it's generating more money because it's a longer song. Um, but it has to be a song that's registered. That's why when you register, you also put the time of the song in, or the time
mhm,
length. It wouldn't just be, it wouldn't be like the odd comment or conversation here. But when it comes to like, I know I spoke to a drum and bass DJ recently, and he was like, "Well, my hype man has a few bars, but he doesn't really, it's not a song. He just says a few bars and shout outs." And I'm like,
yeah.
question I actually raised with the live team. I can't quite remember the answer now, but it's an interesting one. But
Yeah.
if email me again and I'll check with our team. So it's an interesting one there.
Mhm. That's good to know because I was just thinking a tip maybe might be because for me now that I'm thinking about it, if I do a set, it's gonna be different almost every single time.
Yeah, of
And
course.
if I go through Sentric, for example, and I've only got one version of a song on Sentric, and that song or version says that it's a 2 minute song.
Mm,
But one day I say, you know what, I want to make a 4 minute version of the song and perform it live.
mhm.
You might want to have to publish multiple versions of that song depending on the length.
Yeah. So what happens here with versions of songs? We have the option at Centric, and it's a good question, important point. We basically won't. You won't need to add the song again if you've added one song and it's by you and you've got 100% of the split. It's only you, and it's a 2 minute version, and then you re-release it as an extended version, and it was longer, but the songwriter split is still 100% you. That isn't considered a new song, even though it's different. It's still if it's the same song name and still the same splits, then we would then say, look, add it as a recording, not a new song, and then we'd have the recording option there. When you're claiming the live set, not you'd have to add the say whichever version you did, um, and I think that would then be accounted for. When the
Mm.
live claims coming through, if it's the longer version or not. But that's again a good question. You guys are hitting me with some tough ones today. I wanna feed this all back because I don't want to just be giving out incorrect information. I'll let you know what I know, and if there's something I'm not 100% sure on, I'll go away and I'll double check with the team.
Cool. I see you getting the screenshots.
Mate,
Um,
if I get any praise, I'm screenshotting you. I'll tell you right now.
no,
Um,
I think everyone's happy with this chat.
nah,
Um,
really, honestly, you guys have been great. I really do appreciate it. I don't know if there's any other questions. If not, I think I'll have to let you guys go. And then,
I think
you
that's
know,
it.
you've got my details now. You know how I am. If you haven't had a question answered, forward it my way. And like I said, if I don't know, I'll get somebody that does. But yeah, guys, T, really, really appreciate it, man. Any other final thoughts before I head?
No, I think that was a great chat about everything that you do and also a chat about what publishing is as a whole.
Yeah.
I think you went into a lot of details, nearly to the point where it was confusing, but not too much. It was a good,
There's yeah,
tasteful
there's
one,
some
and I think that's
confusing
probably your goal.
points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it gets that way, but it's useful to know the detail. But the best thing is to try and demystify and simplify as best as possible.
mhm.
But again, essentially here to demystify as best you can if you ever have any questions. But yeah, T man, really, really appreciate you. Thanks for the invite. And any questions or anything, let me know, man. But yeah, good to be in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
For sure. Thank you.
Bless, guys. Take it easy.